The universe is ancient, far older than we can comprehend. Civilizations have risen and fallen, their legacies buried beneath time itself. But what if humanity was never meant to begin anew? What if our history, our true past, was taken from us? In the endless void of space, forgotten secrets stir. A blade of unknown origin, bound to the very essence of existence, awakens in the hands of a man who should never have found it. A war, erased from history, begins to resurface. And an enemy beyond reality itself returns to reclaim what it once sought to consume. Drake Carter never believed in destiny. But destiny has found him. Now, hunted by those who fear what he's uncovered, pursued across galaxies, he must uncover the truth before it's too late. Because something ancient is waking. And it remembers. Join us as we unravel the forgotten war of humanity, where myths become reality, and the past refuses to stay buried. Do you dare uncover the truth? A dying sun hung low in the alien sky, casting elongated shadows over the jagged crystalline formations of Proxima Centauri b. The air shimmered with a golden glow as the planet's vast crystal valleys reflected the fading light, creating an illusion of endless liquid fire rippling across the surface. The land itself seemed both alive and ancient, whispering secrets of a forgotten past through the occasional gusts of ion-charged wind that sent eerie, melodic hums through the crystalline spires. At the edge of a sheer cliff, a lone figure stood, his silhouette stark against the burning horizon. Drake Carter, clad in a black stealth suit, exuded an air of quiet confidence. The matte fabric of his attire absorbed the ambient light, making him almost blend into the shadowed rock beneath his boots. His arms bare, tanned, and marked with old scars rested at his sides as he surveyed the alien terrain below. Despite the overwhelming alien beauty of the landscape, there was something unsettling about this world. A tension in the very air. A silent watchfulness that made the fine hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. A soft chuckle interrupted his thoughts. "You're going the wrong way again," a voice teased, rich and lilting like music woven into the wind. Drake smirked, turning slightly. Standing a few feet away was Rhea, her sapphire blue skin radiant in the amber light. Her long, dark hair cascaded down her back like woven strands of midnight, moving ever so slightly as if caught in an unseen current. She was dressed in a sleek, form-fitting exploration suit, reinforced with subtle, flexible plating that hinted at her warrior's nature. Her silver eyes gleamed with both amusement and mild exasperation. "I swear, you humans have the worst sense of direction in the galaxy," she added, placing a hand on her hip. Drake exhaled a soft laugh, the edges of his mouth curving into a roguish grin. "Maybe I just enjoy getting lost," he mused, his voice deep, steady, edged with a teasing lilt of his own. Rhea's expression shifted slightly, just a flicker, but enough. There was something in the way she regarded him, something unspoken beneath her amusement. A gust of wind swept across the valley, carrying with it a faint, metallic resonance. Drake's gaze followed the sound, his eyes narrowing as he spotted a structure rising from the heart of the crystalline expanse. Not a natural formation, no, this was something deliberate, It stood half buried in time, its surface dark, absorbing rather than reflecting the golden light of the sun. A monolith. Ancient. Unmoving. Waiting. Rhea noticed his shift in focus and sighed. "Come on," she said, her voice lower now, almost hesitant. "If we hurry, we might reach it before nightfall. And trust me, you don't want to be out here after dark." Drake raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He had learned early on that when Rhea spoke like that, it was best to listen. As they began their descent from the cliff, the wind carried another faint hum through the crystal-laced valley, a sound that was neither natural nor technological. A sound that felt like a whisper from the past. The towering monolith loomed before them, its surface a deep, abyssal black that seemed to consume all light around it. Unlike the crystalline landscape that shimmered and refracted the golden glow of the sun, this ancient structure was utterly devoid of reflection, as if it had been carved from the void itself. It stood alone, imposing, unyielding, a relic of a time before any known civilization in the galaxy. The air thickened, carrying an unseen weight, a pressure that pressed against their skin, urging them to tread carefully. There was something unnatural about this place. The silence was too perfect, a hollow absence of sound that swallowed their breath and dulled even the faintest echo of their footsteps on the smooth, black stone beneath them. Drake's hand instinctively rested on the hilt of his sidearm, though he knew no conventional weapon would offer him protection against whatever power slumbered here. Rhea's silver eyes scanned the surface of the monolith, her brows furrowed in deep concentration. She lifted her wrist scanner, the small device flickering erratically. The readings made no sense. Then she saw it. Embedded at the monolith's very heart, rising from the dark stone like a spine of pure energy, was the sword. It was unlike any weapon ever forged by known hands. The blade pulsed faintly, a rhythmic glow that seemed to breathe as if the sword itself was alive. Strange glyphs ran along its length, shifting and rearranging ever so slightly, as though whispering some forgotten language just beyond the reach of understanding. Rhea stepped forward, her voice dropping to an odd whisper. "Every species that has discovered it has tried to remove it, and failed." Drake exhaled slowly, his eyes fixated on the blade. Something about it called to him, a pull deep in his bones, in his blood, something that bypassed thought entirely and settled in his very being. He had seen this before. Not here, not in this lifetime. But somewhere, in a dream, in a vision, in the echoes of a past that was not his own. Rhea turned to him, wary. She could see it in his eyes, the strange, distant gleam of recognition. "Drake," she warned, sensing his intent. But he was already stepping closer, reaching out. His fingers brushed the hilt. A sudden shockwave of energy burst outward, spiraling into the air, crackling like distant thunder. The ground lurched beneath them, the monolith groaning as if awakening from a 1,000-year slumber. The air vibrated with an unearthly hum, a sound that did not belong to this world, a sound that belonged to something older than time. Rhea stumbled back, eyes wide as the light from the sword grew blinding, wrapping around Drake in tendrils of blue-white energy. "You can't be serious." But it was too late. Drake's grip tightened, and with a single, fluid motion he pulled. The moment Drake pulled the sword free, the universe fractured. A surge of blinding white light erupted from the blade, consuming everything in its path. It was not merely brightness, it was presence, an overwhelming force that pierced through time itself. Every nerve in his body ignited with an alien sensation, as if something vast and ancient had just reached into him, pulling his mind beyond the boundaries of the present. His breath hitched. His vision fractured. And then, he was somewhere else. The air burned. Drake found himself standing at the edge of a colossal battlefield, but this was no war fought on solid ground. The very sky twisted and screamed as fleets of impossible warships clashed against an unseen enemy. The ships, sleek, predatory, adorned with symbols eerily similar to those carved into the sword, moved with inhuman precision. Their hulls pulsed with living energy, their cannons unleashing beams of pure destruction. Each shot did not just destroy, it unmade, erasing entire enemy vessels from existence. Drake's gaze drifted across the endless void, his mind struggling to grasp the enormity of what he was seeing. And then, he saw them. The enemy. They did not have form, not in the way matter was meant to exist. They were wounds in reality, moving with an unnatural grace, their bodies shifting between solid and incorporeal, as if they did not belong in this universe. Their very presence corrupted space itself, leaving trails of darkness that bled into the stars. The warships fought valiantly, their pilots human warriors clad in intricate, glowing armor, moving with the lethal elegance of something far beyond mortal comprehension. They wielded weapons unlike any Drake had ever seen, blades that sang, staffs that folded reality around them, shields woven from light and thought. And yet, it was not enough. The vision lurched forward. Now, he stood within the halls of an empire, a city that stretched beyond the stars. Towers of shimmering metal and light defied gravity, suspended in a sky filled with celestial machinery, artificial moons and planets built, not born. This was the heart of something immense, something godlike. The streets bustled with figures, humans, but not as he knew them. They moved with a grace, a presence that felt, enhanced. Their eyes burned with the same ethereal glow as the sword in his hands. They spoke without words, their thoughts intertwining in waves of understanding. Drake could feel their power, their unity. And then, he felt their fall. A tremor of destruction rippled through the vision. The once proud empire, a civilization that had mastered the cosmos, that had sculpted the very fabric of space-time to its will, was burning. Drake saw its fortresses crumble, its towering spires shattered, its fleets torn apart like paper. The void creatures swarmed through the ruins, consuming light, erasing history itself. The last survivors gathered in a desperate stand. The final guardians of humanity's forgotten legacy. One by one, they fell. Until only one thing remained. A single blade, plunged into a monolith of darkness, its glow fading, waiting. The vision snapped. Drake gasped, stumbling back into reality. His body trembled, his breath ragged. The sword in his grip pulsed in time with his heartbeat. A deep silence hung between them. Rhea was watching him, her silver eyes wide, her scanner flickering erratically as it struggled to make sense of whatever had just happened. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "Drake, your eyes." They were glowing. The very air crackled. The moment the sword had awakened, it had sent a pulse of energy rippling across the landscape, an unseen wave of ancient power bursting through the silent world. It traveled far too far. Across the twilight-lit valleys of Proxima Centauri b, it echoed, reaching unseen ears, awakening dormant eyes. And now, they were coming. A deep rumble cut through the silence, low at first, then rising, a sound that did not belong to the natural harmony of this place. The sky, once painted in hues of molten amber, darkened as shadows moved above. Rhea's scanner flashed red, an urgent series of pulses dancing across its display. "We need to move," she hissed, her tone tight with urgency. "They are coming." Drake barely had time to process her words before the world around them exploded into motion. A fleet descended. From the churning clouds above, ships broke through the atmosphere like hunting birds, sleek, angular vessels cutting through the dim light, their metallic hulls reflecting the crystalline landscape below. Their arrival was silent at first, predatory in the way they hovered, watching. Then, suddenly, blazing white spotlights burst to life. Rays of searing light pierced the ground, scanning, searching, carving through the jagged terrain with cold precision. The hum of their engines grew into a roaring thunder, vibrating through the crystal formations, shaking the earth beneath their feet. A deep, mechanical voice boomed from above, an alien language spilling into the air, a warning, a command, an ultimatum. Drake didn't wait to find out what it meant. He grabbed Rhea's wrist. "Run." They moved. The ground beneath them fractured in shimmering reflections as they sprinted across the uneven landscape, their forms twisting in a distorted light. The air burned cold in Drake's lungs, every breath sharp, every step a dance between speed and survival. Above them, the ships followed. Spotlights slashed across their path, seeking, locking onto them with terrifying accuracy. Each time the light touched the ground near them, the earth sizzled, as if the air itself had turned against them. Rhea was 2 steps ahead, her movements impossibly fluid, her body weaving between crystalline structures like a shadow slipping through water. Her people were built for this, for speed, for agility. She didn't need to think, her instincts knew the terrain like a second skin. Drake, on the other hand, he just ran. He wasn't as fast, but he was relentless. Every time he stumbled, he recovered. Every time the ground shifted beneath his weight, he pushed harder. He wasn't built for elegance, he was built for force. And in that moment, he was unstoppable. The night had begun to fall. The twin moons of Proxima Centauri b hung low in the sky, casting eerie blue light over the crystalline terrain. The pursuit had turned into a relentless hunt. The security forces weren't just chasing them anymore. They were closing in. The air hummed with a rhythmic thrum of engines, growing louder with every second. The ships above weren't just tracking, they were preparing to eliminate. Drake's breath came fast and sharp. His boots pounded against the alien ground, scattering tiny shards of crystal beneath his stride. Beside him, Rhea moved like a shadow, her figure barely visible in the dim light, her every step calculated, her breath controlled. Then a break in the terrain. They skidded to a halt at the edge of a steep ravine. Below, hidden among the jagged formations, a sleek, black vessel lay in wait. Rhea's stealth ship, seamlessly camouflaged against the darkness. There, Rhea hissed. A deep, mechanical whine cut through the air above the telltale sound of weapons charging. They had seconds. Drake didn't hesitate. He leapt first, boots slamming against the ship's hull as he slid down the side, gripping the cold metal to slow his descent. Behind him, Rhea followed, landing in a crouch before sprinting toward the open hatch. The moment they hit the deck, the sky erupted. Plasma fire rained down. Bright white streaks carved through the air, slamming into the rock formations around them, sending shards of molten crystal flying in every direction. The air itself sizzled, superheated by the relentless assault. The ship's automated shields flared, absorbing some of the blasts, but they wouldn't hold for long. Rhea vaulted into the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls. The ship hummed to life beneath them, a deep vibration resonating through the hull as the engines came online. The display screens flickered, mapping out their escape trajectory in real time. Drake barely had time to strap himself in before Rhea throttled the engines forward. A sudden, violent lurch. The ship lifted, then twisted sideways, narrowly avoiding another blast of searing energy that exploded against the ravine walls, sending molten rock cascading down in a fiery avalanche. Drake gripped the harness, his knuckles white. "You call this flying?" he shouted over the roar of the engines. Rhea shot him a smirk, her silver eyes gleaming in a dim cockpit light. "I call it surviving." Then, with a single, sharp motion, she punched the throttle. The ship rocketed upward, slamming them back into their seats as the artificial gravity struggled to compensate. The view outside blurred as the vessel spiraled through the atmosphere, dodging incoming fire with precision that should have been impossible at this speed. The enemy ships adjusted course, locking onto them with deadly accuracy. A pulse of red light flashed on the control panel. Missiles. Incoming. Rhea muttered something in her native tongue, fingers dancing over the console as she rerouted auxiliary power. A high-pitched alarm blared. Drake turned his head just in time to see two bright projectiles streaking toward them, twisting, spiraling, following their every maneuver. "Any time now, Rhea." "Hold." The ship spun violently. A sharp dive, a sudden roll, and then, at the last possible second, a burst of countermeasures exploded behind them. Brilliant flares scattered into the darkness, confusing the missile lock. For a breathless moment, the projectiles veered, their tracking systems scrambling. And then detonation. A massive shockwave ripped through the sky as the missiles collided in a cascade of fire, sending debris spinning into the void. Drake let out a slow exhale, his heart still hammering. Rhea flicked a switch, and the ship's cloak activated, wrapping them in a veil of invisibility as they slipped past the upper atmosphere. The enemy ships hesitated, scanning, searching, but they were already gone. With a final surge of power, Rhea's ship breached the atmosphere, the fiery glow of re-entry fading as the endless expanse of space stretched out before them. Drake unclipped his harness, shaking his head with a breathless laugh. Well, that was subtle. Rhea leaned back in her seat, her smirk returning. Next time, she said, you fly. The stars stretched ahead, and the hunt had only just begun. The ship hummed with a steady vibration as it soared through the twisting, shimmering corridors of hyperspace. Outside the viewport, space was not space at all. Instead, it was an ever-shifting tunnel of impossible colors, a rift where time blurred and the void whispered in voices long forgotten. Streaks of violet and gold pulsed along the ship's hull, the after-effects of their high-speed escape still lingering in the vessel's shields. Inside the cockpit, the dim control panels cast a soft, flickering glow against the metallic surfaces. The tension in the air was thick, unspoken yet palpable, like a distant storm waiting to break. Drake sat rigid in his seat, his breath shallow, his fingers still wrapped tightly around the hilt of the sword. The metal beneath his grip was warmer now, pulsing in rhythm with his own heartbeat. No, not just his heartbeat. Something else. Something old. Something awakening. The moment he closed his eyes, the universe tore apart. A rupture in time and thought. Suddenly, he wasn't on the ship anymore. He was somewhere else. Someone else. The air burned with the scent of ozone and ash. A battlefield stretched before him, but it was not land. It was the void itself, a war fought in the chasm between dimensions, where the laws of physics twisted like dying stars. Drake's vision expanded. He saw them, the warships. Colossal, gleaming vessels drifted like gods through the abyss, each one engraved with symbols that pulsed with energy older than the stars themselves. The humans inside them, they were different. More than human. Their eyes burned with light, their hands wove through holographic interfaces as if they were conducting reality itself. They did not fire weapons in the way he understood. They willed destruction into existence. Beams of raw, concentrated thought lanced through the void, shattering things that should not exist, creatures made of darkness and hunger, beings whose forms defied sanity. Drake tried to focus, but the void screamed back at him. It was alive. It was angry. And it was coming. A shadow unfurled across the battlefield, swallowing entire fleets into nothingness. It did not attack. It simply erased. For every human warrior that unleashed destruction, the void retaliated with something far worse, an unmaking of reality itself. Memories of their existence blinked out like dying stars, civilizations forgotten in an instant. The humans fought until the last warship fell, until the last soldier wielding his sword of light stood alone against the encroaching dark. And then, there was silence. The final survivor drove their blade into the fabric of existence itself, sealing something away, locking the past behind an unbreakable door. Drake saw the symbols on the sword glowing, shifting, calling to him. Calling him to remember. The vision shattered. Drake gasped, his body jerking back into reality as if he had just surfaced from drowning. His breath came in ragged, uneven gulps. The ship was still humming. The hyperspace corridor still pulsed. But everything felt different now. His hands trembled. The sword was still there, still in his grip, but now it burned with an intensity that hadn't been there before. Rhea had been watching him in silence. Now, slowly, she reached out, her fingers brushing against his arm, a steadying presence, a reminder that he was here. That he was real. Her voice was soft, but laced with something deeper. Drake, what did you see? He swallowed hard. His voice, when it came, was barely more than a whisper. We fought something. He exhaled, his chest rising and falling like a man who had just run through eternity. Something beyond our reality? Rhea held his gaze, searching for something in his expression. Then, quietly, with a weight of understanding, she said, "Then we need to find out why." The void stretched infinitely before the maze sea of silent darkness, broken only by the soft, pulsing glow of distant stars. The nebula they had just passed through swirled behind them, a churning mass of deep purple and gold, its gaseous tendrils reaching into space like unseen fingers. The ship's sensors were quiet now, the chase behind them momentarily lost in a distortion of hyperspace travel. But the stillness was a lie. Something waited in the dark. A ripple in space. A flicker of movement. Then, like predators slipping from the cover of night, the pirate fleet emerged. They came in fast, 3 vessels, angular and vicious, their hulls a patchwork of stolen technology, pieced together from the bones of fallen ships. Their exteriors bore the scars of countless battles, jagged plating welded with little care for aesthetics, only for function. And at their center, a ship larger than the rest, draped in a shadow of rusted metal and hungry intent. The comms crackled to life. A voice spilled into the cockpit, low, taunting, dripping with amusement. "That's a mighty fine artifact you've got there, human," the pirate captain purred, his tone thick with satisfaction. "I'd suggest you hand it over. Saves me the trouble of prying it from your cold, dead hands." Rhea's fingers danced over the ship's controls, her eyes locked on the incoming vessels. Her breath was steady, but her pulse quickened. Drake, however, barely reacted. His hand tightened around the hilt of the sword, feeling the familiar warmth pulsing beneath his grip. The blade, or whatever force lay within it, was awake now. And it was listening. His voice was calm. "Come and take it." The moment the words left his lips, they attacked. The pirate ships lunged forward, engines burning blue-hot as they opened fire. Streaks of plasma carved through the void, tracing jagged paths of light in a vacuum. Reyes' ship lurched sideways, a sharp, stomach-turning dive, barely dodging the first volley. Warning lights flared across the cockpit, alarm signals flashing in a dim interior. Shields holding, but not for long, Reyes muttered, eyes flicking to the damage reports. Drake stood, the sword still clutched in his grip. The blade, once dull, now pulsing with raw energy, began to shift. And then it ignited. A brilliant arc of energy shot from the hilt, extending into a blade of pure, concentrated light. The glow was unnatural, a shifting, volatile blue, the edges crackling like it had been torn from the very fabric of existence itself. For a second, Drake simply stared at it. Then instinct took over. He moved. The airlock hissed open, revealing the vast nothingness beyond. There was no sound in space, only the distant vibrations of battle, the faint hum of the ship's engines. Drake launched himself forward, a blur against the void. The nearest pirate vessel loomed ahead, its thrusters burning bright, preparing for another strafing run. Drake didn't give it a chance. A single, fluid motion, the sword sliced through the darkness. The energy beam extended, a whip of destructive light, cutting straight through the pirate ship's engine housing. The effect was instantaneous. Flames burst from the fractured hull, oxygen venting in a violent, silent explosion. The ship shuddered, spiraling out of control, its remaining thrusters sputtering as it spun helplessly toward the nebulous, crushing gravity well. From the cockpit, Rhea watched. Her breath caught in her throat. Drake was still moving, twisting through zero gravity, the sword glowing like a beacon, his body fluid and precise. He wasn't just fighting, he was wielding something ancient, something powerful. A low whistle escaped her lips. That. She exhaled, almost breathless. Was hot. The battle wasn't over. Not yet. But in that moment, Rhea knew the pirates had just made a very, very big mistake. The ship trembled as it pierced the upper atmosphere, swallowed by a sky raging with endless storms. The planet below was nothing but a churning abyss, a vast, violent ocean of clouds, where jagged arcs of white-hot lightning cracked against the darkness like the arteries of a living storm. Wind howled, a force unseen yet felt through the ship's frame, a guttural, ancient thing that seemed less like weather and more like a warning. The storm was alive, and it did not welcome intruders. Rhea's hands gripped the controls tighter than usual, her gaze flickering between the ship's failing sensors and the maelstrom ahead. The winds here weren't natural. The readings didn't align with anything she had ever seen, currents shifting at impossible angles, gravity bending where it shouldn't. The ship bucked violently as another bolt of lightning tore across the sky, striking dangerously close. The shields flared in response, their glow flickering, but holding. For now. Drake stood near the viewport, his eyes locked onto the swirling abyss below. He wasn't looking at the storm. He was feeling something else. The sword still clutched in his grip was pulsing, a steady, rhythmic glow, like a beacon calling to something below, or answering something. Rhea saw it too. Her voice was low, careful. "It's leading us." Drake didn't respond at first, because in that moment, he knew this place, this storm, this world, it wasn't hiding something. It was protecting something. And then, the clouds broke. The moment was brief, a fleeting fracture in the endless chaos. Through the storm, through the blinding flashes of light and the howling vortex of wind, a shape emerged. It wasn't land. Not entirely. It was a city. Suspended within the eye of the storm, a colossal structure stood untouched by the raging tempests around it. Towers of metal and stone, their surfaces etched with symbols that glowed faintly, pulsed as if breathing. Bridges stretched between floating platforms, levitating ruins bound by invisible forces, their architecture unlike anything in known space. Time had forgotten this place, but it had not claimed it. It stood, waiting. Drake exhaled, his voice barely above a whisper. This is where it all began. The silence inside the structure was unnatural. Not the stillness of abandonment, nor the emptiness of a place long forgotten, but something deeper, a silence that listened. The walls of the chamber pulsed faintly with an ethereal blue light, the same ancient glow that emanated from the symbols lining the monolithic pillars. The air was thick with static, humming with a presence unseen, something that had been waiting, watching, across eons of lost time. Drake's footsteps echoed as he stepped forward, the sword in his grip vibrating subtly, as if recognizing the space around it. Rhea followed, eyes scanning the vast interior. The architecture was seamless, forged from materials unrecognizable, untouched by decay. Then, the light changed. A pulse. Slow, deliberate, aware. The walls flickered, glyphs reactivating as a low, reverberating hum rolled through the chamber. Dust lifted as if disturbed by a breath of unseen air. Then, the room came alive. At the center of the chamber, a column of light expanded, swirling like liquid metal suspended in air. The temperature dropped. The static in the air intensified. A voice followed. Low. Resounding. Not human, yet unmistakably familiar. You have awakened the final key? Drake's breath caught in his throat. The voice was nowhere and everywhere, sinking into the space around them. It was speaking directly to him. The swirling light shifted, solidifying into a faint, ghostly figure, a projection of something once alive, now bound in endless existence. Eyes formed within the light, not human, yet reflecting something deeper than mere intelligence. And then, the words that shattered everything. You are the last guardian of humanity? A pulse of silence. Rhea turned sharply, her silver eyes wide, disbelieving. It recognizes you? Drake felt his heartbeat hammer against his ribs. But deep down, he already knew. He exhaled. His grip on the sword tightened. Because I was meant to be here? The AI's form shifted again, the flickering glow revealing fragmented images, star maps, battlefields, the remnants of a war that had never been recorded in human history. The void entities were never destroyed. The voice was calm. Absolute. They are returning. The light dimmed. The air grew colder. The future had just changed. And time was running out. The stillness of space was deceptive. A quiet before the storm, a fragile illusion that shattered in an instant. A fracture appeared. Not in the way a ship folds out of hyperspace, not in the way planets cast shadows across the void. This was something else. A wound in reality itself, jagged and unnatural, stretching open like the torn fabric of existence. The stars around it dimmed, their light devoured by the growing void. And then they came. A ripple passed through the silence, warping everything it touched. Space itself twisted, bending in unnatural waves, distorting like glass cracking under pressure. From the gaping tear, shadows slithered forward. They did not move like ships. They did not move like anything bound by the physics of this universe. The first shape emerged, a mass of writhing, elongated limbs, shifting in and out of focus, as if it could not fully exist in this plane of reality. It had no solid form, only the suggestion of it, a twisting mass of tentacles, shifting geometries, hollow voids where ice should be. And yet, it was aware. The air inside the ship turned heavy, like the vacuum outside had somehow reached in and stolen all breath from their lungs. Rhea's fingers clenched against the control panel. Her voice a whisper, barely audible, trembling. They are here. The void entity descended. Not falling, not flying, but pulling itself through the rupture, stretching impossibly across the abyss. Where its presence touched, space fractured, gravitational distortions twisting light, bending metal without force. The ship's instruments flickered, scrambled by something beyond technology's ability to measure. Drake tightened his grip on the sword. The blade pulsed in response, a beat that was not just energy, but recognition. This was what it had been waiting for. Drake took a breath, steadying himself against the overwhelming sense of wrongness pressing into his mind. His voice, low but unyielding. Then let's remind them who we are. The sword flared to life, its energy surging, not just a weapon, but a beacon. The void had come. But so had the last guardian. The storm world trembled. Far below the raging battle in orbit, the ancient city pulsed with renewed energy. The symbols lining its structures glowed brighter, their patterns shifting, responding as if something deep within the planet had awakened. Drake stood at the heart of the chamber, the sword thrumming in his grasp. The walls around him pulsed in time with the blade, an unseen connection forming, ancient systems recognizing something lost but now returned. The ground beneath his feet rumbled. And then the city answered. A deep, resonating hum filled the air, building, layering upon itself like a celestial choir rising from the abyss. The storm above churned faster, spirals of wind and lightning converging at a singular point in the sky. Then, as if called from their slumber, the first warship rose. From beneath the planet's surface, buried under centuries of forgotten history, an immense battlecruiser emerged, its hull sleek, angular, pulsating with an ancient blue glow. It moved with an eerie grace, as if gravity itself bent to its will. And then another rose. And another. One by one, the last fleet ascended. Colossal vessels larger than anything humanity had ever built in its second age lifted into the storm-filled sky, their engines igniting, releasing a roar that sent shockwaves across the land. From orbit, the void entity paused, its grotesque form twisting unnaturally, sensing something it had not expected. Drake exhaled, his heart pounding. Rhea, standing beside him, stared upward awestruck. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "We're not just fighting." She turned to Drake, silver eyes gleaming with a reflection of the warships rising above. "We're taking back our destiny." The ships aligned in formation, their weapons systems humming to life. And in that moment, the galaxy itself shifted. The void screamed. A soundless wail rippled through space as the void entities twisted and convulsed, their shifting, impossible forms recoiling from the unexpected resurgence of power. The ancient warships, humanity's forgotten legacy, hovered above the storm world, their hulls gleaming with energy that had not burned in millennia. Then they fired. From the battlecruisers, beams of celestial light erupted, lancing across the abyss. These were not mere energy weapons, they were instruments of annihilation, tearing through the very fabric of reality where the void entities sought to anchor themselves. The first blast struck, and one of the monstrous entities shrieked a sickening, warping sound that seemed to ripple through existence itself. Its form shattered like a reflection in broken glass, flickering before imploding into a point of darkness so dense it ceased to be. Another warship unleashed its payload projectiles of condensed energy, each one leaving trails of radiant fire as they ripped through the enemy forces. The void twisted, writhing against the assault, tendrils lashing out in desperation. But humanity was no longer defenseless. Drake moved without thought, without fear. The sword was alive in his grip, not just responding to him, but fighting with him. The blade extended, pulsing with power, shifting between states of energy and matter. Each slash tore through the unnatural darkness, unraveling their presence like cutting through the threads of an unfinished tapestry. Beside him, Rhea fought her own energy intertwining with the sword's radiance. The connection between them was seamless, unspoken. She wasn't just guiding him, she was part of the weapon itself, amplifying its force, making every strike lethal, precise, absolute. She dodged a whip of darkness, countering with an energy pulse that sent a shockwave rippling through the enemy's shifting form. The void recoiled. In the heart of the chaos, Drake's voice was a steady whisper. "This is just the beginning." Rhea turned to him, breathless, her silver eyes blazing. A grin spread across her lips. "Then let's finish what we started." The fleet unleashed their full might. A final blinding surge of light erupted from the battlecruisers, converging into a single, unstoppable force, a wave of pure destruction, collapsing upon the void entities like the judgment of a forgotten god. The shadows screamed one last time. And then they were gone. The battlefield fell silent, the void stilling as the rift in reality sealed itself shut. Humanity's legacy had returned. And the war for the galaxy had only just begun. The storm has passed, but the battle is far from over. The last fleet has risen, but its purpose remains unwritten. The void has retreated, but it is not gone. Drake Carter stands at the edge of the unknown, a sword in his hand, a history no one remembers surging through his veins. Humanity's past is no longer lost, but what will they do with the knowledge they've reclaimed? And more importantly, who else has been watching? The war is not just for survival. It's for the very fabric of reality itself. What lies ahead? What new secrets will be uncovered? And what truths are still waiting in the dark? Comment below, what do you think the last fleet was really built for? Who created the void entities? And most of all, what happens next? Because the stars have begun to whisper. And they are waiting for an answer.